Alrighty, guys, welcome to Lone Wolf 101. I decided to do just a recording for the Lone Wolf 101 class, so I have a better quality video to send to you guys, and I can go step by step on how to create your account, how to connect it to Command, and how to connect MLS to your account, so that way you have access to all the forms and all that good stuff. So I'm logged into a Command account that I don't normally use just to kind of start from scratch and go from there. So just to kind of give you an idea of what this class is going to cover, we have 4 sessions that are going to go through the setup of Lone Wolf and connecting it to command. So command settings is session 1. Command opportunities will be session 2. That part's going to be a little bit more of just things you're used to doing when it comes to creating an opportunity. However, I'm going to go through step-by-step instructions if you're newer to command on how to create an opportunity, because those menu options have actually changed, and then we're going to connect it to Lone Wolf. Then we're also going to go into Lone Wolf and talk about the differences between DocuSign and Lone Wolf and how to send a document and what all the menus mean in there and all that good stuff. And that'll be set part of session 3, Command Lone Wolf. And then last but not least will be session 4, Command Paperwork Editor. So we're going to go through Lone Wolf, pick a document, send it off for signature, and show you what that looks like. We'll also cover what email that's coming from Lone Wolf, so that way you're able to tell your clients what email to expect that from. Just a little housekeeping, we're going to also go through some of the differences on DocuSign versus Lone Wolf. That way it'll help you guys kind of understand that most of the features, if not all, are a part of Lone Wolf. They just may be called something different or maybe in a different location. So just right off the bat, one thing is in Lone Wolf, the biggest change that you're going to notice is that in DocuSign, we used to talk about envelopes. Envelopes are how you sent things to your clients. It's how you would cancel an envelope if you needed to edit something when it came to paperwork or anything like that. In Lone Wolf, those are called signings versus envelopes. And then the other thing in DocuSign, every transaction had what we called a room for the purposes of keeping everything together. In Lone Wolf, those are called transactions. So in DocuSign, they're called rooms. In Lone Wolf, they're called transactions. And then the other thing that you'll notice too is that in Lone Wolf, some of the terminology has changed when it comes to templates and or layouts and what they call. So I'll kind of cover those live in class so that way I can show you the examples and how you use them from that perspective. Like for instance, in Lone Wolf, templates mean packets of paperwork, when in DocuSign, those are just packets. So we're going to go through all those differences and nuances and things like that. And then last but not least is the one thing I wanted to mention is that in Lone Wolf, when you want to make a correction to a set of documents, to paperwork that you're sending to your clients, that's going to be called reset. That's a word that I wasn't crazy about at first, just because when I reset something, it feels like I'm completely deleting everything and starting from scratch. In DocuSign, that was what you would call a correction when you were trying to correct an envelope and go from there. So just a couple housekeeping things in terminology terms. Now we're going to kind of dive in here and start to give you guys all set up in Lone Wolf. All right, so the first thing is, once you watch this video, I am going to also provide you with the sheets or the Google links for you guys to have access to some of the stuff that I'm going to be using for class. So first thing is, I just found the random property in MLS that I'm going to be using as part of our transaction to import this information from MLS. One of the highly anticipated things that Lone Wolf was to bring us was the import feature from MLS and from the tax record. So you can import listing information straight from MLS into the transaction to help you complete offers and complete listing agreements and things like that. So this is just the listing that I'm going to be using. If you wanted to follow along, it's not a requirement, of course. And then you also have the handout for class. Kind of went over the topics: command settings, Command Opportunities, Command Lone Wolf, which is where we're going to go through and show you all the different menu options and features that Lone Wolf has to offer. And then last but not least is Command Paperwork, where we're going to go through, actually send off the paperwork to ourselves for signature and kind of cover some of that stuff. And then we're also here at the bottom, it shows you what the email would look like that it's coming from. AuthentiSign is who Lone Wolf actually uses to get the signatures. And then some just housekeeping and kind of wording thing here. Since we're on this page, the emails that the paperwork's coming from, and I'll reiterate this later, is going to be secure at authentisign.com. So that is where the paperwork will come from. It'll be on your behalf, of course, but it'll come from that specific email, not your email necessarily. So again, if you're watching this recording, of course, that's why I'm doing it. You'll get links to these paperworks to these two handouts once you receive the link for class. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I'm going to start off at agent.kw.com, which is command, and I'm going to work my way through setting it up and kind of getting to the settings here. One thing that I'll mention is if you have multiple profiles, like this is an account again that I don't use, that's why it has 99 notifications here. Always check your notifications, FYI. But if you have multiple accounts, if you're a part of a team, part of coaching, whatever, what have you, part of multiple offices, you only have to connect Lone Wolf one time. So you're not going to have to do this per account or anything like that. We're going to do it once per command account total. So that's all with that. So let's go ahead and get started. So you're going to click on your name at the top right, and you're going to go down to settings. Once you're in settings, you're going to notice that if you had DocuSign connected previously, that should still say connected. After July 14th, DocuSign will be dead, which means you won't want to have access to paperwork or anything like that. So the office is currently in the process of downloading every file that's ever been created in DocuSign. And if you submit it for compliance, there are copies of the paperwork in command that'll stay in command in the opportunity. So don't freak out about that. However, if you do feel that you wanted to download specific files that were important, or that you feel you wanted to have a copy, a backup to the backup, if you will, feel free to log into your DocuSign account and download those VERMs. It's really easy to do. You can download them. Actually, let me just show you how that would work. So let's go here. Let's log in to DocuSign. Actually, let's do it in another browser just because I want to make sure I use a specific account. So let's go here. We're going to go to DocuSign just because we brought it up, and I want to make sure you guys feel confident in what we're doing. We are going to log in to DocuSign. Again, this is not a requirement. This is just if you feel the need to download a specific file to have on, one of your files that you want to have. But the office will have backups to all this that you can just call us or whatever to get access. And again, it's in your opportunities, so don't freak out. If you're under documents, if you click on action here, there is an export room feature. So you just export the room. It's going to ask you if you want export as a CSV or as a PDF. I'm going to do PDF because I just want copies of whatever paperwork is in there. If any, it's going to be thinking for a minute, as you see here, and then it's going to give you a zip file that you can then find in your downloads. I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to go to my Finder here and go to downloads and find my folder. And here is the information that it's downloading. This specific file, guys, I don't have any signed PDFs, which is why they weren't included. But if you have signed PDFs, that's how you would download the summary and whatnot, or the CSV. But that's how you would download your stuff. You can also go here and click on the individual documents, right? If you just want the PDFs and not necessarily the summary of the transaction, you can go here and then go to download, and it'll download all those files. But again, it's not a necessary process. It's just if you are feeling that you wanted to have a backup to one of your specific files, that's how I would do it. All right, let's get back to this setup of Lone Wolf. So we're going to click on Lone Wolf Connect here. It's that teal button that you'll see here. So I am going to click on Connect. If this box does not pop up automatically, check the search bar, because that means that your browser is blocking the pop-up box from coming up. So just make sure you check that from that specific there. All right, so now I'm going to plug in the email address that I'm going to be using for my Lone Wolf account. You can always update the email address in the future if you change email addresses. I'm not going to tell you which email address you need to use. It could be your KW, whatever business email address you're using, by all means use that one. One thing I will say is once we connect this lone wolf account to your command, that's it. They're not giving us a disconnect feature as of right now. So as you see here, previously with DocuSign, we did have the option of disconnecting it and connecting it with a different email. As of right now, they're not doing that just because they're doing the single sign-on. What that means is once you connect your account of Lone Wolf to your command, you'll be able to go back and forth from Lone Wolf to command without having to log in to Lone Wolf necessarily, which is a great feature. It's single sign-on. Similar to when you use Stellar MLS and you click on links and it logs you into Form Simplicity or Transaction Desk. It's just a single sign-on. It kind of keeps you going back and forth. There's been plenty of times that I have struggled or logging into DocuSign and things like that. This is just one-stop shop, kind of logging you into everything. So that's why, as of right now, they're not giving us a disconnect feature. Anywho, so I'm going to click on continue because I want to create an account. However, if you have an existing Authentisign account or Transaction Desk account, those accounts will work with Command. So feel free to connect those. I am not an expert on Transaction Desk or Authentisign specific accounts. I just use the Lone Wolf version of Command here for our purposes that was created for KW. However, if you have an existing Authentisign account and or Transaction Desk account, I've been told and seen that they work the same way. So you don't have to necessarily create a new one, but feel free to create one if you're not using those other accounts. Okay, I'm actually going to click on sign up because I don't have an account. I want you guys to see what it happens when you sign up for the account. So I'm going to click on sign up. I'm going to plug in my email address that I want to use. Continue. And it's going to give me these options right here, right? It's going to give me the options of, first name, last name, all that good stuff for me to, and I'll be taking some screenshots throughout class just so I have them on my end for future purposes to help people. Anywho, so now that I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and fill in this information to my information. So I'm going to plug in my first name. I'm going to plug in my last name. Country, of course, is US. State is Florida. English is the language, and I'm going to choose a password. I'm not going to necessarily use this account, so we're going to go, let me see which password I want to use real quick. And then we'll go from there. Bear with me real quick. Can at least start it so that you guys, I don't want you guys to see the password necessarily. There we go. So let me just recheck that to make sure that I'm good. So again, it's telling you the specifications for your password. Again, you can pick whatever password you want. Doesn't matter. There we go. We got that. So we're going to continue here. Now it sent a verification code to my email, which is great. So let's go get that code. I'm going to take a screenshot just so I have a picture of this as well. And then I'm going to go fetch that code. Here's my code. Going back. Continue. And you'll be doing the exact same steps when you're setting up your account. This is one reason why I decided to re-record this class to show you these specific steps, because the first time we did it, agents were able to do this, but I wasn't able to show you guys online how this all works. So I want to make sure that you guys see this. So this is just your new dashboard experience. We're going to do the agent experience here. So we're going to make sure that you select agent, not broker. And we're going to select that. It's just going to show you some examples if you wanted to kind of go through like a how-to step-by-step. I'm actually going to skip this because I'm not really interested in that. But now that we have completed this step, you'll see that the account is kind of already logged you in to that. One thing that you're going to look at here where it says your dashboard is fully set up and complete setup, we're going to go through and complete that dashboard. We're going to add our MLS ID numbers and things like that to that. However, I wanted to make sure that you guys saw what that looks like because we're going to do it on the actual website, not in this little screen. It's just a little bit hard to kind of manage. So I'm actually going to close this box and you're going to see that it says, transaction is now ready and found, it's connected. So you're going to see here, up here, that Lone Wolf is connected. I don't have a disconnect option, as I mentioned before, and everything's connected from that perspective. Along with that single sign-on, one of the cool things is once you either create an opportunity or if you're back here in settings, you can click on Go to Transact, and it'll take you straight to your Lone Wolf account, which is what you should do to finish the setup, so that you can finish setting things up, which is what we're going to do next. As you see here, if we're under transactions, it's blank. There's nothing going on. We're going to finish setting everything up in a second. One thing I want to mention here too is going to Transact is taking you straight to the website. That website is platform.lwolf.com. You can go straight to that website and start working on transactions. Some of you may have done that before with DocuSign when it comes to skipping creating the opportunity and going straight to DocuSign. By all means, you can continue to do that. It's just not the recommended way of doing things, because you want to make sure to create the opportunity and then create the transaction so that everything's linked, so that you don't have to manually download all the forms and then re-upload them into Command. However, sometimes Command may be having issues. You may need to send that addendum quickly. You feel free to log straight into Lone Wolf and work from there. But again, this will take you straight to that website, and you can work your files from there. Again, but the recommended best practice is to go into opportunities, create it, and then go from there to Lone Wolf. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to go back into Transaction Desk, or Lone Wolf, sorry. I'm going to go over all of these options in a couple minutes, but we're finishing setting up our profile. So what we're going to do is you're going to click on the KW here, and we're going to go to Home. That is going to take us to the home screen of Lone Wolf, which is where we want to be. There's a dashboard here that's going to have figures and percentages and things like that that may not be relevant as right now because this is national market data. That may not be relevant at the moment, but you can drill that down to your specific location and may be more relevant to you then. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to finish setting up our profile to make sure that our MLS ID is added in there and that we're good to go. So I'm going to click on Complete Setup. And now I'm going to tell it that I'm an agent, not a broker or an admin. If I was a broker or an admin, that's the option I would choose. But for today's class, I'm going to choose I'm an agent. I'm going to go down to Florida, and I have to find my board. So I'm looking for Stellar MLS, and then my agent ID. So what we're going to do is this is your MLS ID that you want to plug in here. So let me look mine up real quick. I need my MLS ID. So we're going to search for that. And here's my MLS ID. So let me plug that in, 261550166. Now I'm going to click Continue. And that's it. My dashboard is good to go. I've set up my account. There's going to be one more location. This isn't going to go away right away. Now that we've done it, let me just make sure. I'm going to click Complete and it's done. Continue. We're good to go. So technically, you can just go up here and close this out. It's done. You don't have to worry about that. It says Stellar MLS here, so you're good to go. There is one more location that we're going to go to set up for the paperwork access that we need that MLS number. So keep that MLS number handy because we are going to need it in a few to add it to your account so that you have full access to the paperwork. So let me just jot this number down, and we'll have it for reference. All right, so that's done. Now that we've done that, if you're following along in the printout, we've pretty much done everything in that first section here. So we've created that step-by-step instructions, some disclosures slash, like I said, you can't disconnect Lone Wolf once it's connected, and you can download all the required forms for compliance when using Transaction Desk, which means you can go straight to Transaction Desk and download the forms and upload them into Command. It's just not the best practice. You can use existing Lone Wolf accounts, and files can be created directly on the platform.lwolf.com. But again, please go into opportunities and go from there. We're going to be working our way into session 2 right now and talking about command opportunities. And then we're going to come back into Lone Wolf and kind of go all of the features through there. But I kind of want to go back to the beginning just because the settings have changed when it comes to the menu options for opportunities. So let's go ahead and do that. I was going to change accounts and go into my account that I normally use, but let's just keep this same one and kind of go from there just because it'll be an account similar to what you guys may be doing or setting up. Again, when you're creating an opportunity, you can click on the KW on the left-hand side and go straight to opportunities and create opportunity. I, for one, love creating opportunities from the contact card itself, it's a preference. It doesn't matter how you do it or how you want to do it. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go in here and switch profiles, and I'm going to see if I could find myself here. I don't have any filters on, so that should be good. Let's see. If not, I can probably enter myself in. But I'm here already. This is why I didn't want to have to re-enter myself in. So I'm going to click on myself as the example again. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to plug in some information to just create the opportunity for today's purposes. For today's purposes, I'm going to create an opportunity for a buyer. But again, you can create the opportunity for a listing, for a buyer. It really doesn't matter. If you're following along, go ahead and create one for a buyer. But we're going to dabble back and forth in all the features in general. So I'm going to go under opportunities. I'm going to click create, and this is kind of where some of the options have changed. Before it would take you to a different screen. Now it's going to have you pick whether it's a listing, buyer, landlord, or tenant right off the bat. Again, I'm going to choose buyer. And I'm going to go in here and my buyer is myself. Opportunity name. If you're working with a buyer and you know the property, please plug it into the property opportunity name. If you're just working with them to get buyer paperwork signed, like a EBBA, then you're not going to have the property address at that time necessarily. But I'm going to say I do have the address, and I'm going to plug it in here just as a best practice. So I'm going to say it's 123 Main Street for today's class. And then I'm going to go to the opportunity phase and stages. That just simply means where it is in the pipeline and the opportunities. I'm going to say this is an active buyer and that we're currently searching and showing. As far as the budget is not a required field, I am for one love to plug it in. So I'm going to say it's 750 as a budget. And I'm going to say that the estimated closing date we're looking at is the middle of July. Again, some of this information when you plug it in will make its way over to the paperwork, which is great. But most of it is just kind of keeping track of everything. All right, so I'm going to click create. I now have my opportunity created. Pretty basic. We've done this before. Most of you can do this with your eyes closed. I just wanted to go through some of the different options, and we're going to continue that here. I'm going to click on the opportunity name. It's going to take me into the opportunity. Not a lot has changed here if you've been in the system recently. One thing is that collapsible panel, which I love to collapse once I plug in all the information. One thing I always do here is plug in the address again if you have an address available. If you're just working with a buyer, you may not have one of those right away. So I'm going to choose the safety harbor address. Again, it's an example, it doesn't matter. I've plugged in my address. This helps the office find your file when we're searching for it. And then contract price, I can go in here and say, hey, even though their budget is 750, I'm going to say 725 for the contract price, because you'll see where that's plugged into the actual paperwork later. I'm going to collapse that panel. Again, if you needed to change the opportunity name, you can do that here. And then there's a couple of different options here that if it has space for it in the paperwork, it will fill it in for you. Once we create the transaction in Lone Wolf, it will give you a sync to sync button for you to sync the information over to transaction desk. Which if you were to change any information in this section of command, it'll automatically update it in Lone Wolf is what that's for. We're actually going to go down to the documents section and create our transaction. So first you have to select your checklist. I'm not going to go through any of these options here because again, we're just trying to get to Lone Wolf. But again, all of these have different requirements, and come see me if you have any questions specifically about the different requirements and or checklists. Residential is what we're going to choose. That's going to give us the consultation, under contract, and close folder for us to work our transaction. Again, the consultation folder is where you're going to get your buyer paperwork signed, under contract is your contract, and then your close paperwork is mostly title paperwork. One thing here that you'll notice is that you're going to have two options when it comes to the e-signature provider. So since I have two accounts for e-signature providers attached here, it does say sync with e-signature provider. In your case, if you only have Lone Wolf connected at this point, it's going to say sync with Transact, which is okay. So that's some differences there that I do want to point out from my screen to your screen, but everything else should be connected and working well. It doesn't matter whether you have DocuSign connected or not, because again, DocuSign will be deprecated soon. So now that we've selected our checklist, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select Lone Wolf in a second. I want to point out one thing. If any of these folders have documents that have an LW on it, that means that the office is going to preload the document for you, so you don't have to go search for it. Also, if something is underlined in command, you can just snag a quick copy of that form real quick by just downloading without even going to Lone Wolf or Transaction Desk. I mean, Lone Wolf or DocuSign. I don't think a lot of you know that you can just snag these documents if you just needed to print a copy or whatever. You can't fill them out here, but you can download them if you need to. Not every single form has that feature. It's just most of the popular ones that I've gone through and plugged that in for you guys. Same thing on the under contract. You'll see that some of them have that underline. And then, of course, that the LWOOF means that it's going to put it in your transaction for you. All right, so let's go ahead and get this started. I'm going to go to sync with eProvider and I'm going to click on Lone Wolf. I'm going to select myself as the agent, right? MCTT. But again, if you're in coaching, you'll select yourself. If you're an individual agent, you shouldn't have to select yourself. Actually, you may have to select yourself. It's okay, just your name, no agent two, unless you're working with a specific agent, which most cases you won't be. But we're going to hit sync agent. And now we're going to notice that this is going to take us over to transaction desk. If this doesn't happen, if it does not open a tab, check your pop-up browser. Your pop-up blockers will block this from happening. But here's your transaction. Right off the bat, if you're taking this for the first time, you're going to notice something that really made me happy. There's consistency here. So consultation folder, under contract folder, and close. That legitimately matches command, right? That's a good thing, and we're going to go through all those features. So you're going to notice that off the bat, there's the buyer paperwork. Then you have of course, the under contract paperwork that you're going to need. And then close paperwork just has the walkthrough there for now. You're going to add any additional paperwork that you may need. So that's that. And then you're also going to notice, so if I go back to command, because I mentioned it before, under the panel, now you have that sync to transact button. Hit this once, just for good measure. And then we're going to go back here and we're going to work our way through this transaction. Now, at this point, I would have went through and selected a document, showed you those features, but we're going to come back to that. I want to show you now is the time to talk about Lone Wolf and all the different features and things that may have changed, especially from DocuSign, and how I would approach things moving forward, just so you're familiar with the overall program in general, okay? So if I go here under transaction and click that, it's going to take me to all my transactions. And I only have one here because, again, I use this account specifically for this class. But most of the time, you're going to have some accounts here that are going to be, you're going to have a lot of transactions that are going to be listed here. You're going to notice comparing this to DocuSign, transactions is where you would click on rooms, right? So if I was to show you DocuSign, it'll have a rooms tab, and then it had a templates tab and things like that. Signings is something new. Signings is where you're going to see all of the signings. And remember, signings are what we use to refer to in DocuSign as envelopes. Signings are where you're going to be able to see all of the signings that you have sent out to any of your clients in any transaction, not just specific ones. If you want to see ones for specific transactions, you will have to click on that specific transaction, and I'm going to go through that as well. But you do have a tab here to see all of the signings at once. Now my tab is going to be empty because I haven't sent anything out. And then last but not least is templates. Templates on our main screen is simply where you're going to add packets, right? So if there are specific forms that you use with your clients or an investor, you can gather those packets here for future transactions. So templates equal packets in DocuSign, okay? So that's just the highlighted there thing that I wanted to call out. But one thing we're going to do is we're going to click here and we're going to go to the home section. This is the menu option that you have within Lone Wolf, similar to DocuSign. And I'm going to just log in one more time just because I want to be able to be really specific in what we're talking about. In DocuSign, there was a feature that you could go back and forth from DocuSign Rooms to e-signature. If you were using DocuSign at a high level, e-signature is something that you would be familiar with because it's where you would set up your templates and things that you would use for future transactions, repeat transactions. But here under your initial or your photo, you'll see where it says switch to e-signature. This menu option is very similar to the menu option that you're going to see in Lone Wolf. See, now this is the e-signature part. Most of you DocuSign users may have never even seen this part of DocuSign, but it did exist and you could manage your envelopes through here and even sign things right away without sending yourself an email. So some similarities there if you're using DocuSign at a high level. So hopefully you'll be able to use Lone Wolf at a high level as well. So right off the bat, you're going to see here that there are 4 options here at the top. AuthentiSign is how Lone Wolf gets all of its signatures done and stamped to make sure that it is a legitimate signature and all that good stuff. Boost is campaigns for Lone Wolf. You're not going to necessarily use any of these anything in Boost right now. In the future, we may have some more features that we may find helpful under Boost, but as of right now, no. Contacts. Anytime that you create a transaction, you can go under contacts and add sellers, buyers, other vendors, other co-brokes. This is where you're going to come manage those contacts through contacts there. Okay. Going back to the home button. One more thing I want to mention here because it came to mind. Under vendors, if you were to add your mortgage rep or add your title person here with, like if I go here under, let's see, let's do escrow, oh, title. Let's do title. And I'm just going to search Hillsborough just because I know that we're going to have some people there. And Jenna does work with us here at Hillsborough. So I'll put Jenna as my title rep. But now that I've added this, I still need to go here and sync this information over to Lone Wolf. So she's going to be a part of my parties. She may not be a part of my contacts right away. But eventually she will make a way. Once the system updates, she will make her way into this section here. But I am going to show you once we're working our transaction where Jenna actually made it to from Lone Wolf here, from opportunities here. I'll show you how it will eventually make its way over to contacts, but she is going to be a part of my transaction once we go through those features. All right, so let's go back to the home page. And then the last thing but not least, transaction command edition is like when you were in DocuSign and you would say switch to rooms. So that's primarily where you're going to be working is going to be transaction command edition. However, if you wanted to pull up old PDFs, signed PDFs, and things like that, that's all going to be under Authentisign. That's where it's kept. And where if you delete a room or a transaction, sorry, if you delete a transaction, it will make its way over to Authentisign. That's where you'll always be able to pull things up. The only thing, since we're talking about delete right now, if you were to delete a transaction, you have 180 days to restore it and to keep working on it. After the 180 days, you can still look it up under Authentisign and download any forms that were available under that transaction. You just can't restore it and continue to work on it. You have to recreate it. So you have 180 days once something is deleted to continue to work on it. After that, you'd have to recreate it. But again, you can always find copies of the paperwork under Authentisign, the Authentisign section of Lone Wolf. And I just clicked on there so you guys would see what that looks like. I'm picking my time zone because I have not been here. So we're going to do New York, Eastern Standard Time. Yes, Eastern Standard Time, English. Apply daylight savings times and hit accept. And here's where you would come to look for all of those transactions and or paperwork that you needed to restore or what have you. So now we're going to go to the home button back there. We've covered the different options when it comes to your main menu here in Lone Wolf. Now we're going to work our transaction. So now if you're following along on your sheet here, we are doing fairly well. We're under Lone Wolf Command Session 3, Command Lone Wolf Edition. We're going to work. We went through the menu. Now we're going to work the paperwork if you're following along. And that's when this information MLS is also going to be relevant. So let's go back to our transaction. How do we get there, Eric? We're going to go here and I'm going to click on Transaction Command Edition, or I can do it here. It doesn't matter. Go back here under my transactions. Now, sometimes you may notice that the address won't load here right away. That's another use of this sync button. So you're going to use this sync button to go in here and make sure that everything is, because it does take the system some time to push things over, but you can kind of force its hand if you use that button as much as possible. Now I'm going to go here and I'm going to click on my transaction and I'm going to work my way through the second bullet point there where this used to be rooms in DocuSign. So now I'm going to click on my transaction. And right off the bat, it's similar but different, right, from DocuSign. In DocuSign, we had a details tab. That details tab has turned into this section here of property information on the left-hand side, where you can now indicate if you've accepted or rejected your offer, you're currently searching, you have a purchase tag here, and then you have parties. Right. So here are the parties that are involved in this transaction as of when we created it. Right. One thing with parties is you can come here and add other vendors or other people that may be involved in this transaction. Right off the bat, because I use an account for coaching, it's going to add Jenny as the buyer's agent. I can, of course, change it. I'll show you what that looks like. But I am the buyer, right? Because I use that contact as a thing. And then technically this is me. So there's two buyer's agents because, Jenny is a part of coaching and I'm using a coaching account. However, let's say that I'm the buyer's agent and not Jenny. I can go here and remove her. And now it's just me. Here's Jenna, right? I've synced this over from command. So now Jenna is a part of my transaction without me having to add her there, right? The only thing I'm going to have to plug in is her email. So let's go ahead and look for Jenna's email. See if she pops up for me. Yep, there she is. That's Jenna's email. So I'm going to plug that in there and we're going to save her to contacts. That's how we send her over. And then we're going to save that. So now we have Jenna saved into my transaction, but she's also going to be a part of my contacts, meaning I can add her to other files quickly from Lone Wolf if I forget to do the whole sync thing in command. Now that we've done all that, that's parties, right? This used to be under the details tab in DocuSign. Now it's its own section. The next thing on here is going to be property. So this is part of the cool feature that they've added to Lone Wolf. So you can go through here and you can plug in all your information. See my list price, right? This is part of my offer price that I put in in command. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to import some information directly from MLS. Now that's also going to change my fake address, which is fine. It's just for today's example. But again, this is where you can import information from the tax records, which I have not personally used yet, or MLS, but it works the same way. So let's go in here and plug in from MLS. You're going to have to plug in the MLS number, which again, I'm snagging from this printout here. Go here, plug that in. If you're plugging this in, you have to do capital T, capital B, or it will not work. I don't know why, but that's just the rule. So now that I've plugged in my MLS ID, I'm going to click import and we're going to see what happens. Boom, it's imported my photo from MLS and updated my address according to MLS, how much the list price is, the tax ID number is here, including the legal description. People and agents have been asking for this feature forever, so this is an exciting one to have. I'm going to click here under property type and say it's residential. It tells me what year it was built based on MLS information. And then listing expiration isn't important to us right now because we're not technically on the list side, we're on the buyer side. However, one thing that I do like to point out here is please verify on the county tax records that this is the correct legal description and that this is the correct tax ID number. We should always be verifying that information independently. Don't just rely on these import tools because sometimes agents may enter in things incorrectly, or you just never want to completely rely on somebody else when it comes to that kind of stuff. So just double check your info. I'm going to put a dash here. Actually, you don't need it. And now I'm going to hit back. So now my property information has been loaded here and my photo has been updated on the picture, which I think is pretty cool considering it took us 2 seconds to import that information over. Under the offer section, you can plug in what your offer is. So we're saying that this house was listed at $398. I'm going to say we're going to offer, let's do $389, right? Deposit is going to be $5,000. This will make its way over to the paperwork if it has a space for it. If it's not, it's just mostly, closing date. Let's plug that in. We said we wanted to close on the 15th and kind of go from there. We could add conditions if you want to or whatever, but this is more like a reference section, not necessarily something that's going to pop up itself later. All right, so now that we've done that, we've imported the information, we've covered some of the information here on the left-hand side, which is your old school details tab in DocuSign. Now it's kind of just features on the left-hand side of the screen. So we've talked about that. Let's work our way at the top here with all your options. So again, before this used to be your documents tab, now it's paperwork. Signings is where your envelopes used to live. So signings and envelopes are now, signings are now envelopes. The to-do section. The to-do section is where you're going to plug in information about the transaction or reminders for yourself. So as a checklist, reminders, things like that you need reminding of. The system will send you a notification through the system. However, agents in my last class asked me if you get an email. We're not sure yet. I do need to test that. Let's see if I can test it here, and by the end of class, maybe it'll send me something. But test. And again, you can do a to-do, You have things like on a specific day, so we can say it's today. Let's do test again, and then just note, and then say that we need 15 minutes before, and we're going to select today at what time. It's 10 o'clock. So let's do like 11:15 because we should still be in here finishing up. All right, so let's just do 11:15 or 11 a.m. is fine. 11 a.m. Can't seem to click. I'm having trouble here myself. All right, so 11 a.m. All right, let's save and let's see what happens with that notification. Today's date, and then we're saving. Perfect. So we'll see where we get that notification. And then timeline. Timeline is where I thought timeline and history were kind of the same. Timeline is where you're going to see, you can put things down like your inspection period. You can put things down like the appraisal that's happening or whatever time sensitive things are happening within that transaction. So those are some examples of how you can use events. And then of course, history is where you're going to see everything that you've done from creating the transaction in command all the way to adding paperwork, parties, deleting parties, and things like that. By who and by whom and or and also include the date and the time. All right. So now let's go into paperwork. So once you create a signing, we'll be able to click these dots here to kind of show you guys what happens with the signing if you needed to correct it or if you needed to do anything with that. But real quick, if I click on the three dots here, the little centipede, you can apply templates, which remember are paperwork packets. You can share or export or delete. This is where if you delete this entire transaction, you can always restore it in that authentic section I was talking about within 180 days. After the 180 days, the transaction will still be there. You can download paperwork if it's available, but you cannot continue to work on it. You have to recreate it is the biggest thing. Okay. So we've talked about that. So now let's go through and fill in our paperwork. We talked about templates, talked about signings and all of our stuff up there. I'm just making sure that I'm going through everything, guys. Again, we are now towards the end here, right? This is just kind of me giving you some notes on what's happening with all of those tabs and all those new changes on there. So if you're following along on this sheet, looks like we are making our way over to session 4 when it comes to where we are and paperwork editor. Now we're actually going to select a document, send it for signature, and go from there. Okay. The document that I'm going to choose to send is going to be the contract just because obviously you can click and drag here. It's pretty intuitive. But before I do that, let me explain 2 more things. You can upload paperwork to this transaction, sending it to this email address here. This email address will only work for this transaction. So if you were to copy this into your inbox, then put it into an email and attach a PDF, it will make its way over here into your paperwork. You can add a new folder if you need to, right? You can create a new folder here, just do test, and it'll add a folder to match the close, under contract, and consultation. Add paperwork. I have a love-hate with this version of this button. I'm going to show you a better version of the button that I like. If you use this add paperwork here, and let's say that I needed a lead-based paint. I'm going to go to Florida Association of Realtors, and I'm going to go here and add HOA. Right, and it doesn't matter which one. There's crisp or Farbar, blah, blah, blah. Let's say that I add this document. It's going to create a folder and then say not filed. I don't like that because I can't rename this folder. If you create a folder from scratch, you can rename it. I can't rename this folder. I can't do anything with it. So it annoys me that it says not filed, right? So I prefer to delete that, which will delete the folder. It's the only way to delete the folder. If you're going to add an HOA, like disclosure, addendum, what have you, click here, click add paperwork here, and it'll add it to that specific folder, right? So let's do homeowner association. And if you click on here, it'll show you which one you're adding, which I really do like. So I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to add it. So now I've added the disclosure into the under contract folder, which is where it should be. Same thing with lead-based paint or any other documents you're adding to there. And that's how I would prefer to add paperwork. It's not the end of the world if you use this feature here. It's just I would prefer that. I don't like it from that perspective. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's continue on. We've talked about that. We're gonna kind of go through now and work all of our options when it comes to um, creating and working the paperwork section. So now we're going to go through all of the features that we have in Lone Wolf that may have changed or may just be called something different when it comes to Lone Wolf. All right, so I'm going to use the contract. You can either click here, multiple documents, which is how I would recommend doing it. Don't send one document at a time. You can download it or set it up for signature, or you can also go here to delete, print, or download. But you can also just click on the document. If you click on the document, then it won't let you add multiple documents. Oh no, look, preview only, right? What is happening? What did I do? What did I not do? So you're probably going to run into this if you have not added your MLS ID number to the paperwork. So let's go back to paperwork. Let's hit add paperwork. And let's go down here. You see down here where it says click here to link your NRDS ID. In the state of Florida, your NRDS ID is your MLS ID, which I said we were going to need one more time. And this is the time for that. So NRDS ID, here it is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click here. And now I just need to add my NRDS ID, select my state, and then hopefully I'll be able to look at the paperwork and work from there. So let's plug in my ID number. There we are. Select our state and hit submit. If you don't have your MLS ID number like available right in front of you, you can click here and it'll take you to looking it up on the NAR website. So you can do last name or email address or last name and your license number to look up your number. So feel free to do that if you don't have your number. I'm going to go here and I'm going to select, I already have my number, so I'm going to click submit. It's going to accept my number. And now I have access to the paperwork, which means if I go back to this, let's refresh. If I go back to that as is contract, hopefully that red writing is this contract. And again, if you click on there, it'll give you the option of editing the form. Now, this is where you're going to type out the form. This is where you're going to enter in all of your information, offer price, all that good stuff is going to go into the form here. Similar to when you use it in DocuSign, you can click on the form, fill it out, and just save. Same exact thing. However, here, when you're editing the form, one feature that was not available in DocuSign that is available in Lone Wolf is you can add other documents from the transaction. So let's just say that I wanted to add like the KW disclosures. You would just hit this plus symbol right here, and then it'll add it to the bottom of whatever form, whatever order we're in for us to edit the document, right? So you could then send this document with the rest of the paperwork. I am a big advocate of sending everything together versus individually, but however you want to do it is okay. So now I'm going to go through here and kind of fill things out. I did have that little bit of a hiccup with the paperwork in my MLS ID, so I'm just going to go ahead and plug in the $389 price for the offer price. But again, you're going to plug all this information in per the contract and per the lines. And again, you can add paperwork. You can add a PDF if you wanted to from your desktop, if you downloaded it from MLS or what have you. So again, those features, layout is different, but feels familiar. However, this is also very intuitive. I love the way that this version of the platform feels compared to DocuSign. Now we're going to work our way down some of the features here to show you how they change from DocuSign. So of course I talked about the save feature. You hit save, you can go back to transaction and kind of work from there. There is an auto save here as well. Many of you have fallen victim to the DocuSign problem where if you do not touch the document, let's say you get a phone call or you get distracted, you come back and you didn't save in DocuSign, you would have to retype that entire form. Lone Wolf has a auto save built in, so you will not have that as an issue. Okay, so let's work our way here on the right hand side with some of the features. So parties, pretty straightforward. Parties involved, as I said, I had brought Jenna over from the opportunity as well as myself and things like that. So you can say, okay, these are the folks that are going to be a part of the party. There is another section where we're going to add things, so I'm not going to necessarily mess with the parties here. I like to mess with the parties once we prepare the signature, but you can go through here and edit their information, email address, and or address if you choose to, for everybody involved. But I like to do it. I like to edit the parties um, in the next screen, and I'll show you why. Okay, so that's that. Listing info is all that information that we imported over from MLS. Offer information is that placeholder information that you have from this. It's the detail tab in DocuSign, but it's the left-hand side of transaction. It's just if you plugged in any information here. This is meant more like a reference guide, to be honest, versus anything else. But let me see if I plug in 389 here, it does put it on the actual offer there, so we can save that. And again, I saved it, but it does have the autosave. So we can get rid of that. And then clauses. Clauses are where you guys may have specific verbiage or things that you do with your clients, investors, what have you. If I go down here under additional terms and I click on add clause, now I have been in here before, so I've added some clauses. Clauses like inspection repairs, requests, seller credits, buyer credits, what have you. You can put all of those here. So I'm going to put in here my buyer broker compensation clause. Again, there's no wrong or right way of doing this. You can type this out every single time, but now it says seller to contribute to compensate buyer broker 3% of purchase price. However you want to word it, this isn't the wording you have to use. This is just for an example for today. So don't freak out if you're using different verbiage, but do check with either your coach if you have a coach, or Dallas or the broker if you have some questioning verbiage in mind. Okay, so that's the clause feature. And again, if you wanted to add a clause, you can only add clauses during a signing. And what I mean with that is if I go down here under personal, I can create new clauses here. It's the only spot where you can actually add a clause for future transactions. This is also going to be the only spot where you can actually add the clause by clicking here and hitting add clause. It will not let you do it in the next screen. All right. So those are the clauses. And we talked about parties, listing information, offer information, and now we got tools. So these are just some of the toolboxes that you can add. Again, you can add toolboxes here. I prefer to do it in the other screen personally. So I'll show you what that looks like. We can delete that there, but you can add strike throughs and things like that. I like to do this all on the other screen. You can change the font of your typing. So if you wanted to call something out here, we changed it to blue. So let's see if the blue actually takes over, and maybe for the actual text box. So blue, and let's see, it should save it. So bold color is going to be red, and there's your red and whatever colors you wanted to do, right? You could do blue because I talked about blue. Some of you like to do that if you're doing edits to a document or what have you, like scratching things off, crossing things off, and then adding the verbiage. It's easier when you change the color of the font. So that's, you can highlight. Freehand means you can literally circle a specific part of the contract if you want to. Let's go ahead and delete this because I don't need that. But again, I like to use most of the tools in the next page, but those are the first couple ones. If you do have a PDF here, these are all originating from DocuSign. But if you do have a PDF that you've attached to this paperwork that you downloaded from MLS and uploaded to LoanWolf, you can for sure split it, rotate it, what have you. The PDF tool is built in here as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and make our way over to prepare signing. So we're going to go ahead and say we filled this out line by line, whatever. Now we're going to prepare our signing, similar to creating your envelope in DocuSign. So I'm going to click here in the return folder, click on under contract. That's the folder I wanted to go to, but you can pick any of the other folders. Honestly, it's up to you. I want to put it back where it came from. That's me. So I'm going to hit create. It's going to take your document, and now you can still add text fields under tools, but you can no longer edit the actual document. Unlike DocuSign, you could edit in both screens. You can edit when you click on the form, and you can edit it when you were about to sign it, send it off. So that's a little bit of a different feature, but again, not a big deal. Now let's go through and kind of add our participants. You can go ahead here and add from transaction, which is what I'm going to do, but you can add yourself and or new or from contacts. Add yourself. If you need to sign something, I'm going to show you how to do it without sending yourself an email. If you use add yourself, you're going to send yourself an email, which is similar to what most people did in DocuSign, which could get annoying. So I'm going to go to add from transaction. I'm going to add myself as the buyer. And I'm going to leave it at that. Because if you add yourself here, it will make you sign by sending email because I'm also the buyer's agent, right? So I'm going to say I'm adding myself. If you wanted to change to just CC reviewer or remote signer, this is where you would change what the person's role is in the transaction. I'm going to click select. Now I am a part of the transaction. You'll see that the document has automatically assigned my fields for me, right? Now, the mapping, if you're using more than one person, more than one buyer, you could do mapping and it'll let you assign their fields, right? So if you had buyer two, buyer one, whatever, if I had myself in there multiple times, it would allow me to be buyer one and buyer two. To that point, I could go in here, right, and add new and add Eric, right, and add him as another buyer with the same email address. So that's a little bit of a different workaround. In DocuSign, you had to go through a couple of different steps to get that to happen. Here, it will allow you to enter in a buyer or seller with the same email address. If the person has power of attorney for their spouse or what have you, you can enter in their same email address for those people. Buyer here, remote signer, and then there's some options here as setting signing pin and things like that, custom signature and all that other stuff. But we're gonna hit save. So now we have two buyers, same email address, right? All it's gonna do is change the different colors on who's signing where. But if I hit map, it's going to tell me I could change, them from what their role is and the specific role for signing the paperwork. But it's as easy as that to add someone with the same email addresses. I'm actually going to leave it alone. So we have two buyers that we're dealing with. So we're going to go down. Here we go. Our fields have all been assigned, and as well as the final signature on the last page of the contract. There you go. That's been done. Now it's signed by buyer one, buyer two. It put Eric's name there just because it's originated. He was an original signer. This person I just kind of added. So if you needed to add the blue, you could just go to the blue person here, right? This is the stuff, and you can add full name here. So there's the second name there to matchy. Now, one other thing I wanted to show you guys is, let's say that I'm the buyer's agent here and I'm the buyer, but I'm going to sign this form. All you need to do is go under layouts. I'm sorry, tools. Click on this here, go to myself, and then click sign here, accept, and boom, I've signed the document without sending myself an email. So that's as easy for you guys to sign paperwork now. So you can literally sign a listing agreement or whatever paperwork requires your signature before you even send it to your client, which sometimes we forget to do because it was a pain in the butt before, to be honest. All right, so that's that. But let's go to docs. Here's where you can arrange your different order. You can add more documents if you want to, or PDFs, whatever. One feature under signers that people hated in DocuSign was the set order. What I mean with that is it would always automatically set the order of who got the paperwork first, even if you didn't want to. If you forgot to turn that off, it was a pain in the butt because you were like, who got the paperwork? Who we're waiting on? It's a whole thing. So the feature still exists here because it is helpful depending on the type of party you're working with, but it's turned off automatically. You have to physically turn it on and say who's getting the paperwork first. Okay. We talked about documents. We talked about tools. This is mostly where you can assign different fields for different buyers, different colors, as well as yourself. But then you also have all signers where you can say that they both need to sign and it'll add two fields there, right? We don't need that, so I'm going to get rid of it. And then you can say, scratch through whatever from that part there. Then layouts. I'm going to try to explain layouts without making it super complicated because it is something that a lot of people don't use. So layouts are what DocuSign used to call templates. And one way that you would use templates in DocuSign is if you take a form like the seller's property disclosure that you download from MLS, and then you're physically going to have to add each spot for someone to sign. If you had two buyers, you'd have to add two initials on each page. And then on the last page, you'd have to add the signatures. If you're dealing with a PDF, which I can upload one now here just for good measure. So let's go to documents. I'm going to go to add form and I'm going to upload a random PDF. So let's go find one in my computer. Let's go to downloads and I have some forms here. So let's go ahead and upload a random PDF here. And let's act like this was a seller's property disclosure. So it's a buyer's final walkthrough. I've now added that form to the bin here. Creating a layout means that instead of me having to add signature fields here every single time, which means when you get a seller's property disclosure, you go under tools, you go under seller buyer one, and I have to physically add signature here every single time, every single field. It gets annoying because you know, you have to do this every single time to a 4-page document because the seller's property disclosure is 4 pages. You'd have to add a box here for them to sign, for them to fill out here every single time if that's the case. So if you were to do this, let me just do it for all parties, my two buyers. Just doing this quickly, so bear with me. And I'm gonna put name here. And then the property address would be a text box, so I'd have to add a text box here for the property address, blah, 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 that whole thing, right? So I'm not going to go through that part necessarily, but now that I've done this, I'm going to go under layouts and I'm going to hit create layout. Well, now my buyer final walkthrough is the layout that I'm creating. So name the layout. I'm going to say test just because it's what it is. I can identify it later myself. Buyer final walkthrough, create. So now every time that I use the buyer final walkthrough in this example, but we were using it as a seller's property disclosure, if I go under the layout feature and go here to layouts, it'll give me the option of applying my layout. And here it is, my buyer final walkthrough layout that I can then attach, and it'll basically what's going to happen is it'll assign these fields every single time. That's how you would use a layout, which in DocuSign were called templates. Hope that made sense. It can get a little confusing, especially if you haven't used them. Old school means if you don't use a layout, all that means is every time you upload a specific PDF, you're going to have to assign these fields versus how Lone Wolf assigned these for us, right? That's the difference there. All right, so that's layouts. All right, almost to the end here, guys, so bear with me. Under options is where you're going to have all of your options for time zone, changing your signature if you don't like the way that it looks. Signature details, expiration, you can set time for documents to expire if someone doesn't sign them within enough time. And then, of course, you can change where the AuthentiSign positions the signature stamp on their top left, top right, top bottom left, bottom right, whatever. So that's that. One thing here under tools that I did not cover was under myself. You can go in here and scratch things out. So if you wanted to scratch out letters, here's how I would do it, but you can do it in the previous screen as well, right? So it's completely up to you how you wanted to handle that. Let's see if I can move that, right? You can do all that good stuff. That's moved. But again, you have your freehand here where you could literally highlight parts of the contract if you needed to. If you needed someone to call attention, you can highlight things, add text boxes and things like that. So that's how that's done. Now that we've done all that, let's go ahead and go and hit next. So now we're going to hit next. Now we're ready to send this off to our buyers. You can set an expiration date. Doesn't make sense when you're first getting an offer signed by a buyer. It makes more sense when you're sending it to another agent, or if you're on the listing side or something like that, and you're sending something for signature and you want it to have a timer on there. You can customize your invite, which means if you have more than one buyer, you can edit the email signature and say, hi, friend, right? Hey, friend, hi, friend, whatever. But let's say the second buyer you're not as friendly with, or it's, whatever, you could say hello, right? More formal. So I do like that you can customize these messages. So test and then just hi, and that person will get those specific messages. And you can also save this for future if you're working with that person like an investor a ton of times, or you can import a message if you have them saved somewhere. So I'm going to save those, and now I'm going to hit send. Now, under signings, which is our old school envelopes, is where you could see what's pending here, right? You sent that to those two buyers. You can resend it if you need to. You can also go here and reset. This reset is what I said I got scared at the beginning of class, is because to me, reset means delete. Here, it just means that you're going to be able to correct. Maybe you forgot a document. Maybe you entered in someone's email incorrectly. That's when you would reset it. But then, of course, resend will resend. Duplicate will just duplicate the exact same signings or remember their envelopes, and then signing details or Jesus, or you can just delete it overall. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to transactions. And if you go under signings, now you'll have signings here. This is a different account that I'm using, but you'll have all of your signings in one place. Okay. So now going back to transactions, we're going to go here. And we're going to go back to that, and we sent our envelope. Now that we've sent our, not envelope, our signing, I'm going to go sign it so you guys can see what that looks like from a client perspective. So I'm going to go to my email. Here's my two different messages, guys. So one says, hi, friend. One says, hello. So you could definitely split that up for your clients or whoever you're working with. I'm going to sign this one first, but again, here's my high, right here. And now I'm going to click sign. Accept. Now, if they hit start, next will just take them till they can finish reading the document. If they actually want to sign, once they're ready, they're going to have to go here and click on the actual field to get it signed. All right, all signed, complete signing, done. That person can print or download it if they need to, and everything else that's done. Now I'm going to go sign for person two. I did high, so now we got to do the other one, which was this one. So start, this is the test, and then the message subject says hello. So again, I do like that feature. We're going to start our signing. Accept, start, and then just click through. Perfect, perfect, done. That's done. You as the agent will receive an email with the forms completed. You're going to get this twice because we have split it up, right? So there's the second one. They've signed. And then we'll get, once it's done, we'll get an email as well. But if we go back to the room or back to the transaction, sorry, and we go under signings and let's just refresh real quick. You'll see here that now we have signed copies of the form, of all three forms, right? So there, you can also move these up, right? Sign copies. Perfect. So now we have signed copies there. You could technically archive the other ones, right? Or delete because you don't need these anymore, whatever. But now that we've done that under signings, you'll see here that it says complete. And you can view final product here as well. It'll show you the PDFs. I do like that. And you can download them if you need to. And then here you could delete, and get more information from there. All right. We're going to do one more thing now that I've signed these documents. This is why it's important to go from the beginning and create the opportunity. I can now go under documents here in command and go under Lone Wolf as my source. And here you are. You have, let's refresh this. Now you have Lone Wolf, you have close, consultation, and under contract. Let's go to the under contract one, under contract, and then I can match my document. So here's my as is contract, KW disclosure, there it is. And then the last one we did was the walkthrough. So the walkthrough is on this page. So we just have to tell it that it's in the under contract, and there's the, did I do the walkthrough? Was it the walkthrough? Yeah, let's refresh. Documents, under contract, there we go. So walkthrough, right, there it is. However, now I could submit this for compliance. I would review it for you. We go from there, and that's it. So one last thing I like to mention, we're at the end here, is you do have your cheat sheet here with everything that we've covered from features to what not, and some screenshots of what the emails look like, some key reminders, right? Lone Wolf accounts cannot be disconnected once they're connected. Use primary address and opportunity name. Use the sync feature to push command data into Lone Wolf. That's really important once you're using the vendor tab in command, as well as to get the address to show up properly in Lone Wolf. Transaction and transacts equal rooms and DocuSign. Folders must match opportunities. And then you have signing emails from the signing emails will come from secure@authentisign.com. Tell your clients. Files deleted in transactions cannot be restored after 180 days, which means if you, again, if you were to completely archive or delete this folder, this transaction, it's going to be available for you to restore for 180 days. After that, you have to recreate it. You can pull the information from AuthentiSign still. You just won't be able to restore the transaction. And then, of course, that's the reminder there. Paperwork can be looked up under AuthentiSign in the section. All right. That is all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching the video. Please let me know if you have any questions. My email is mctt738@kw.com. If you have any questions, please reach out. Hopefully you found this version of the Lone Wolf class helpful. I wanted to make sure you guys had all the visual aids and things like that when it comes to getting your account set up and getting up and running with Lone Wolf. Just as a reminder, we set an office date of June 14th, which means by June 14th, you guys should be creating new files in Lone Wolf. Even if you have the DocuSign option, you should be using Lone Wolf because at this point, with a 30-day close, 30, 45 days, whatever it is, 30, 60, whatever, you're going to end up losing things in DocuSign in the middle of a transaction. So now is the time for you guys to start using your Lone Wolf, connect everything, and start making that transition because right now you can use both platforms together simultaneously. But come July 14th, DocuSign will be ixnay. It'll be gone, deprecated, whatever you want to call it. I can't restore it for you. It'll be gone and you'll have to recreate all that work. So it behooves you to just start using both platforms side by side and then eventually just stop going to DocuSign. Hope you found this class helpful. Again, I'm here for questions. Hope you have a great day and talk to you soon. Bye, guys.